Iranian attacks continued to target sites across the Gulf this Tuesday. In Kuwait, power lines were hit by air defence shrapnel, causing partial electricity outages for several hours. Bahrain, meanwhile, said it was attacked with missiles and drones and that an Emirati soldier serving with its forces had been killed. The United Arab Emirates, meanwhile, saying air defence systems responded to similar attacks, and Saudi Arabia said it destroyed Iranian drones targeting its oil-rich eastern province. Well, for more now, we can cross to our correspondent in Doha, Hoda Abdel-Hamid. Hoda, the New York Times today is reporting that Saudi Crown Prince MBS, that he's pushing for the US to keep the war with Iran going. What would the thinking be, do you think, behind that reported encouragement?
Well, I think the thinking for Saudi Arabia is at this stage, the Gulf is so unprotected that probably it is better to try to finish this war just to make sure, that the U.S. doesn't leave and Trump declares victory, and then Saudi and the other Gulf countries are left to pick up the pieces. They can come under attack, for example, by the Houthis in Yemen, which happened in the past before this war, and they can come under attack from Iran itself. But the article is based on sources who claim that Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, would have said that this is a historic moment for the Middle East. That language is very much close to the narrative that was coming out of Israel, specifically from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the lead-in to this war. It has to be said that the Saudi government has issued a statement denying any of these claims. This is the fog of war. You will have leaks everywhere, confusing people, paving the way for the public opinion for the next step of the war. Just shortly after this article came out, another leak came out with another news organization saying that 3,000 more U.S. soldiers were on the way to this region. I think it's really to create this fog of war that happens during each and every conflict I covered. Probably the truth is somewhere in between.
And Hoda, Iran this Tuesday is continuing to attack Gulf states. Have you noticed any shift in the intensity or the targets of these attacks, Hoda?
Well, I have to say, I was listening to the press conference, the weekly press conference of the spokesman of the foreign minister here in Qatar, Majid Al-Ansari, because we hadn't heard any alert for the good part of the last 2.5 to 3 days. And then he all of a sudden said that doesn't mean that there haven't been any attacks. Shortly after, the Ministry of Defense has clarified that today alone, for example, 9 ballistic missiles were intercepted here in Qatar. There seems to be maybe a shift that the attacks from Iran are now targeting specific areas away from the urban areas. You see that, for example, in Saudi Arabia, where most of the drones intercepted, or all of them, I would say, on this day, were towards the eastern region. That's home to most of the oil refineries and the most important oil installations in Saudi Arabia. And then you had another attack in Bahrain where a UAE contractor who is of a Moroccan origin was killed, and several others were hurt. That, again, being a military target. So people here are a bit confused. Many would tell you maybe there's space for diplomacy. Maybe something is happening behind the scenes. President Trump seems to say that. He just said it about 20 minutes ago or so while I was on standby to come on air. There seems to be a little bit of a shift, and it's certainly not the same intensity that we had for the first 3 weeks of this war. I wouldn't draw conclusions yet. For sure, Iran is under a lot of pressure. It's being hit on a daily basis, and it's come under a lot of criticism because, according to some statistics I've seen, the 2/3 of Iran's firepower was directed towards the Gulf countries rather than towards Israel. So that is something probably that the military commanders in Iran are also taking into consideration.
Hoda Abdel-Hamid, thank you very much.